happened tons of times before. A member of the gaming media expresses their opinion on one thing or another. Somehow that opinion gets put on a pedestal and it spreads. Eventually, the average gamer adopts that opinion as their own because free thinking minds are hard to find in this day and age. Eventually, that opinion becomes a buzzword or a phrase, and developers in turn start being afraid to hear that word when the media describes their games. And they then sterilize their games to what the mainstream wants. This in turn makes whole series, genres, and subgenres of games disappear and become a thing of the past. You may be wondering where I'm going with this, but the phrase I'll be focusing on today is one that most of us who've been in gaming a while have heard so many times before. The phrase is Doom Clone. It's not a phrase that most younger gamers are familiar with, but I've also recently heard a reviewer attack a game by saying it played like a 90s first person shooter, and the gamers now have higher and apparently mightier expectations. For the sake of argument, let's examine these expectations that make modern first person shooters so much better than that crappy Doom stuff. Or better yet, I'll just tell you a couple of reasons why I still like 90s first person shooters while destroying what I see as idiotic misconceptions that modern gamers have about old shooters. Leave it up to modern gamers to sum a game up by its method of progression.
All it is flip a switch and get a colored key to open a colored door. That's so old.
Games like Doom and Quake do have a simple means of progression, sure, but it's not like it's really changed. Later games like GoldenEye on the N64 came out, and the keys changed to objectives, but it was all used in the same way. Modern first person shooters have their own keys and switches, they just disguise them as something else. That something else is usually a cliche scripted scene. Hey, insert bland protagonist name here. Get on that 50 and do the token rail shooter scene. Jump in that vehicle and do the tired vehicle scene. Sit here and defend this position as the exact same enemies come at you in the exact same pre-scripted way every time, and after which a barrel will blow up next to you and you'll do the scene where you fade in and out of consciousness. And so on. Basically, it's go do this, and when it's done, you progress. In Doom, it's go find the key, and when you do, you progress. Just because they aren't as blatant of tools of progression as keys and colored doors doesn't mean that it's any different in modern first person shooters. I personally really don't mind having to find a key. Why not? In order to find something, that means that a level has to be designed well enough to hide it. The key word is design. Those terrible 90s first person shooter games are a testament to a time when so much thought was put into even the most simplest of levels that the exploration became just as much a part of the game as the killing did. Some modern first person shooters still have some decent thought put behind their level designs. However, the problem is most modern first person shooter developers aren't trying to develop a game. They're trying to develop a cinematic experience. That phrase makes me want to vomit every time I hear it, by the way. Modern levels are just the places where the story and scripted scenes unfold. Have you ever looked around at the modern first person shooter levels? They're pretty damn bland and forgettable. The heavy story focus means that developers put the designs of scripted scenes, whether in game sequences or story elements, ahead of designing the levels. Again, the levels just play as the stage, an unimportant background used to unfold the story. Sure, some of those sequences and stories may be memorable, but I guarantee you that you'll be more likely to remember where the secret areas are in Doom Episode 1 Mission 1 are 20 years from now than you will any story sequence. It was a more rewarding experience to find a secret area than it is to unfold a story, at least in my opinion. There are a number of modern first person shooters who do have their share of hidden items, but in the age of gamer score and trophies, they're usually meaningless items that don't actually reward you in the game for finding them. It's not like finding hidden areas that provide much needed armaments and life pickups. Most modern hidden areas, or my personal favorite, hidden files to find, are just put in there for the sake of being put in there. Not really a good design idea. I really enjoy the openness of choice in older FPS games. Yes, there is a point A and a point B in every level, but the design philosophy was more like the developers gave you a level and then got out of your way. They left it open to the player to explore the world they created how the player saw fit to explore it. Again, it's called level design. The players would eventually discover all the cool design elements the developers put in each level. They didn't hold your hand and force you down a specific path. There was some simple scripting, but they didn't constantly bug you in the areas in between said keys and doors. You were allowed to explore and play how you saw fit. In modern shooters, the player doesn't get that much of a choice. Never mind that level designs of today remind me a lot of Crash Bandicoot. Essentially, they bring you through a tunnel. And what's worse, some modern first-person shooter games even punish you for trying to explore the levels. Or they annoy you by having your teammate bug the hell out of you by repeating the same message every half a second.
Get over here and open this door. Hey, this door needs open. Hey, stack up on the door. Hey, this door needs open.
If you don't play the game the developer's way every time, then you don't get to play their game. There is a little bit of openness in how you take on the enemies in the level, but when it comes to exploration and overall level design, modern shooters are pretty bland.
I'm trying to tell you a story and give you this big epic experience.
They take away your freedom of choice, and, in my opinion, a good story will never make up for a weak design. 90s shooters still have very well thought out designs that put modern level designs to shame. Somewhere along the lines, the idea of being Rambo became a bad thing. I can understand this in shooters with a tactical style to them like Rainbow Six and Ghost Recon. Those shooters try and build up tension, and running and gunning will usually just get you killed. But to be honest, sometimes it's okay to be a badass. Sometimes it's okay to meet the baddies face to face in a rage and come out victorious after a good super shotgun round to the face. Sometimes you want to be able to move as freely as you can in Quake. Run, jump, rocket jump, shoot, dodge, and take on every badass in the game head on. No backing down, no being a sissy. There's still something so insanely satisfying about mowing down hordes and hordes of baddies in Doom. It may not have the epic battles of Call of Duty, which are just simulated epic battles because they are designed to look bigger than they actually are. Because if you look around, you realize you're in a small environment with all this other stuff going on to make it seem like it's a bigger environment. But I find a first person shooter without all the smoke screens to be far more satisfying to play. Modern shooters build a story around the lead character trying to convince you of how badass this character is, but in Doom, you know your character is a badass. He doesn't need a name. He doesn't need a story. No emotions. No sissy feelings. The feeling you get in combat lets you know he's a badass without saying so much as a word. Though he does scream like a little girl when lava is involved. Most modern first person shooters make me feel like my testicles are in a lockbox. You're no longer allowed to be a balls out badass. Just some mamby-pamby sissy with a crappy little regenerative health system that forces you to hide every 2 seconds to regain your life. I will say this straight up. I absolutely despise regenerative health systems. They have their place in some first-person shooters. Sure, I can tolerate them in most of the time. Except in Resistance 2, where Nathan Hale is the biggest sissy in modern first-person shooter history. I can tolerate them in games like Halo, where they added something new and made sense under the sci-fi setting of Halo. Overall, though, I still prefer health packs and armor packs of the first-person shooters gone by. I've heard it said that regenerative health adds intensity. I can see the point they're trying to make whenever they say that. However, you'll never play more aware than in an old first-person shooter when you are low on life. It's one thing to have your butt puckered for a few seconds when your life regenerates. It's something completely else to have it puckered for the better part of an entire level. People have waged complaints about the backtracking for health packs that can sometimes take place in the older first person shooter games. However, that also gives the game another strategic element. How and when you use health packs is up to you and can make the level really easy or really hard. If you get too greedy and just use them all whenever you're not that low on life, you won't have any health later on in the level. And sometimes that can make your journey 10 times harder. I guess since I'm just making a few quick points here and I'm not really going super in depth, as if you can't already tell, I guess I'll close it off by saying I still love those terrible 90s style first person shooter games. Great design is great design, and it's timeless. There's just something I still find really fun about the classic shooters. I think I like the mixture of combat and exploration in an environment that allows you to play each level your way and not the developer's way. Though I do like modern shooters, I feel they are missing some things that originally made games like Doom great. I do feel there is room for old school style first person shooters alongside the modern style shooters. Why do reviewers not realize that there can be many different styles of games in one genre? For every Call of Duty, there's a Halo. For every Halo, there's a Quake. For every Quake, there's a Half Life. And for every Half Life, there's a Deus Ex. Why do they try and fit every game into a box, and if a game doesn't fit into their box, as in their supposed higher standards, which really aren't that high, and they ream it if it doesn't fit into their supposed box of higher standards? So next time someone tells you that a first person shooter is designed like a 90s first person shooter, you shouldn't take it as a bad thing. In fact, maybe you should check it out and go into it with an open mind. You may just find that you like the 90s style just as much as I do. And just a quick note here, it may sound like I come down hard on story in this. I'm not saying that story can't add to a game, but only when the story is done right. I don't like the forced storylines that developers have been shoving down our throats lately. Too much scripted story elements distract from the gameplay. And I really hate it when they pull you out of the game to show you a story element that was pointless to show you to begin with. Also, scripting when done with the right balance can also make for a great game. That's why I find Half Life to be a timeless classic, but I'm generally just kinda with Call of Duty. I think modern shooters need to start trimming a lot of that stuff out more. It's getting the right balance again. Half Life kept you in the eyes of Gordon Freeman the whole time. It didn't pull you out, show you a scripted element. You don't move 3 feet and then see a cinema, and then move 3 more feet and there's another cinema. It's like, why did you even let me move to begin with? Just kept you in the eyes of the player the whole time. And yes, every game has scripting, but there's a difference between, having scripted stuff happen and then just having, like, just so blatantly scripted that you don't even feel like you're playing a game. You sit back and watch the gameplay itself. So there has to be a balance in there, at least as far as I'm concerned, for me to really enjoy a game. But again, I don't hate Call of Duty. I don't hate modern first-person shooters. I mean, Call of Duty's decent, and it's online play is, but I prefer more fast-paced stuff like Quake. Even though I'm really terrible at Quake, like horrible, like your granny could probably beat me at Quake. But I still like the faster-paced stuff. I don't know, but that's just a difference in taste. So to each his own, and the opinions expressed in this video are those of 2D Gamer. And if you don't agree with 2D Gamer, then that's perfectly okay with him, because he doesn't want you to agree with everything he says. The world is filled with too many mini-me's and acolytes of other people. And, well, okay, kind of went off on a tangent. Anyways, so that's my view on it, so talk to you guys later. And just another really quick note here, too. As far as what I mean when I say 90s style, I mean like that Quake Doom style, the Doom clone. I kind of went off a little bit, with this. But as far as the Doom clone style, the 90s style shooter, fast paced, in your face, kill everything. That type of style that, people have. Oh, well, we grew out of that. Well, there's a whole new generation of gamers who never even knew those games. Some of you guys kind of young out there, you've known Halo, you've known Call of Duty, but you didn't know all the older ones before that. So I'm just specifically talking about that style, not necessarily all the shooters in the 90s, in case someone's like,
Well, this game came out in 2000, but it plays just like that. What do you mean by 90s style?
anyway. Well, just another quick note there, I guess.